Right. Yeah. We're good to go. I was making notes, but much raw dog it.
Thanks, sir.
Welcome back to Super Podcast Bros.
Good to be here. Good to be here.
Were you sticking with that name?
What have we been up to today, then?
We've just left the cinema.
Mm-hmm.
And we finished watching Deadpool and Wolverine.
Mm-hmm.
We were thinking about doing news of the week and talking about comic book news that's kind of comic book movie news that's happened this week, but I think we just got to go straight in.
Got a lot to unpack.
A lot to unpack. It was pretty clear from the moment the credits ran. Me and you might disagree with this.
Yes, I turned to you and I said, "What do you think?" And you said, "We'll talk later." And so this is later.
I could see the childhood glee in your eyes.
Yeah, I sensed. We sensed there is a bit of a gulf in our opinions of the movie or our takeaways.
Yeah.
But I suppose to get into it, spoiler free to begin with.
We'll try our best to be spoiler free. So
we could go into. I think we should go into our full thoughts later.
Yeah.
Though.
So the story of the movie is Deadpool has. I'm struggling to remember if this was a direct carry-on actually from Deadpool 2. It sounds like that him using Cable's time machine thing at the end of Deadpool 2 to save Vanessa's life has directly led into the events of this, which is a pretty seamless transition into the MCU because straight from the bat, this isn't an MCU movie. This isn't
Fox.
This isn't the last Fox movie. This is definitely the first Fox MCU movie, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, it has the opening credits and Deadpool's in them, in the MCU credits. But no, it's not that. Remember, so I was a bit taken aback because they set it up like that's the case, and then he straight out asks explicitly if that's because of it, and they said no.
Okay.
It's actually the events of Logan that have caused the conflict for this movie.
So, yes, the story of the movie is that the TVA, which is the MCU movie, the MCU TVA.
Yes.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Pardon me. The MCU TVA has said that Deadpool's universe has to end. Deadpool's timeline has to end.
Yes.
This is Earth 1005.
I think so.
Something like that.
Yeah.
It doesn't really matter. It's Deadpool's world has to end because apparently Deadpool was sharing a universe with Logan. But Logan's dead. Spoiler alert for Logan 2018.
So without going into it anymore, that's it. That's the story. So the timeline's going to get pruned, as we saw in Loki, which they're not supposed to do anymore, as we found out from Loki. So Deadpool and Wolverine are going to fight the TVA.
Yeah.
And they end up in the void from Loki as well. And yeah, some conflicts ensue, as shown in the trailer. Cassandra Nova is there.
Yeah.
And yeah, essentially it's just that the two of them growing to know and get along with each other, because these two have never met, and then fighting Cassandra Nova, and then the TVA, or the branch of the TVA that's trying to destroy his universe.
That's right. So that's the premise of the movie. I think we can get into it, but I think it'll be quite shallow because I don't want to ruin things. I was saying last week, I've avoided most trailers, thankfully. So I don't actually know what cameos have been spoiled. You can't really speak about this movie without cameos, sadly.
No, it's not. What I enjoyed about it is it's not like wanton cameos. Everyone who's in there has a decent amount of screen time.
They have a role. Well, I was making a list. There are some very much fan service cameos, but yeah, most of them have a role to play, which is quite good.
Yeah, whether it be big or small, we get to hear from them, and we get a bit of fan service from all of them. And it didn't feel, how should I say? To me, it didn't feel too cheap because it works within the context of the movie, and also
definitely
the message of the movie. Because as it's Deadpool, there is the main plot, but there also is sort of a more meta plot narrative going on.
Yeah.
which I really, really appreciated, and it works as sort of a goodbye to Fox and a welcome to the MCU as well. So as we saw, Daphne Keane is back as X-23 in the movie. Cassandra Nova is there, as well as some of the Brotherhood of Mutants from various X-Men movies and eras, along with some others which we'll get into later. But I suppose, if this is an end to the Deadpool solo movies as a trilogy, how would you sort of summarize it in your opinion?
This is going to branch into my issues with this movie.
Right.
I think they're good.
Okay.
I think they're serviceable. I still think they peaked with number 1.
Right.
I think it's still fresh in my mind, and I've still got the buzz of seeing all these characters I like, and it's a new story, and it's exciting. So maybe this will change, but at this moment in time, this is only just a little bit better than number 2 for me as a movie.
Really?
Which I know you hate, which is
interesting. Yeah, which is weird for me to hear, but I know that you ranked it a bit higher than I did.
Yeah, I personally would have put it as just a good movie, and I would think this is probably just a good movie, personally. What it reminds me of, this is 20th Century Fox's Endgame.
Right.
The issue with that is, I don't think it's earned that.
Interesting.
I don't think it's earned an Endgame. This movie felt a little bit too self-aggrandizing for me. I appreciated... What I have to say is, this movie shows more love for the X-Men, and actually more love for 20th Century Fox characters than any of the previous probably 5 X-Men movies, to be brutally honest. I think it shows more love for those characters and the actors that played those characters than the previous however many X-Men movies,
right,
or Fox movies, right? So I really appreciate it for that. However, it's too... Because Ryan Reynolds is so crucial to Deadpool and its production, I think it put too much emphasis on how much Deadpool did. If we're doing the Fox Endgame, let's do a like-for-like comparison. Is Deadpool to 20th Century Fox the Iron Man? Probably not. Is he Captain America? Probably not. Is he Thor? Probably not. Still. Is he Hulk? Perhaps. And even in Endgame, Hulk didn't get that much love because he didn't earn it as much as the other 3 characters did.
Yeah.
Whereas in this movie, if they're doing a 20th Century Fox Endgame, Deadpool's definitely made himself the Iron Man here.
I'd be inclined to agree, but I think we had that with Days of Future Past.
We did, and that's what's interesting.
And I think that's great. So what I liked about this is that it's Deadpool and it's Wolverine, which is something people have always wanted to see. And Deadpool, as we discussed, I think is a bit more like Iron Man than we give it credit for, because it wasn't a large budget. People didn't have a lot of faith in it. It took a while to get that project off the ground. But what was it, 2015? So this is after This is after Days of Future Past. So this is when those movies started to decline, minus Logan, and so that has been the commercial kind of shining light for Fox.
Yeah.
In spite of those movies, so it's kind of come at the other end of the timeline to when Iron Man did, and I think this is a Deadpool movie, and so without spoiling who's in it, who isn't in it, bar Wolverine, are those massive X-Men characters, right? You know, Cassandra Nova's in it. You could have done a Charles.
But they show so much love for the X-Men without really showing too many X-Men.
Yeah, so I think it doesn't lose sight of itself as a Deadpool movie. Yeah. And it also does justice to having Wolverine in the title by giving Wolverine a really nice character arc as well. Yeah, that's true. And so, for me, I really like it because without it, the characters who are in it probably would have never come back or seen or received much love for those roles.
Definitely not.
And so...
And what did you call it when we left? How did you describe it?
we touched on this before. When it comes to comic book movies, you have good movies that are comic book movies, and you have good comic book movies. So a good movie that's a comic book movie would be Captain America: The Winter Soldier.
Yeah.
That doesn't have to be a comic movie
first and foremost.
Yes, but it also happens to be a comic book movie. Spider-Man: Far From Home is a kind of up there at the peak of a good comic book movie.
It's a comic book in movie form.
Exactly. If it was just our boy Tom Holland and none of the other Spider-Men and none of those other guys from previous timelines, just recast versions of them, that would be a pretty cookie-cutter movie, right? Yeah. And so you could make that case as well for this with Deadpool. If those characters weren't in there, it would be rubbish. But if my grandmother would have had wheels, she would have been a bike. Yeah. So these characters are in there. And I think if this was a comic book, people would love it. And we've seen stuff like this in comic books, and people love it. And I think watching this on screen, the way the action is depicted, the way each of the characters kind of have their own distinct way of fighting as well, I think makes it enjoyable for comic book fans, but also with the cameos and with the star power, it makes it enjoyable for general audiences as well.
Okay. Yeah, and I can't disagree with that notion. Like, in terms of fan service, in terms of just aesthetically, it is a comic book on screen.
Mm-hmm.
It's closer to a comic book on screen than I would say is a good movie personally.
Right.
If I'm being brutally honest. Deadpool needs to be a comedy. I actually didn't find it as funny as the previous two.
Josiah.
No. Wait. So I mean, Mark Como sums it up best, right? Which is, to be a comedy movie, I need to laugh out loud 5 times or more.
Fair.
I laughed out loud. To be fair, the one time I laughed out loud for a good while.
Yes,
and it caught me off guard, but I laughed out loud twice.
I was going to say I can think of 3 distinct moments.
Okay.
But that's still not 5, so that's not relevant here. But
so
it was chuckle-worthy. It was chuckle-worthy.
There's a couple, but it's only. It felt a bit like, you give someone an inch, they take a mile.
Really?
Because it was clear that they had been given the green light to make this a 15, and they used it to the full extent. Now, Deadpool needs to be a 15.
Mm-hmm.
It has to be to work. But I genuinely got tired of hearing the F-bomb. I got sick and tired of penis jokes. I got sick and tired of decapitations. Genuinely got sick and tired of decapitations.
Really?
I think there was 12 decapitations in this movie.
I think the violence for me wasn't an issue.
It wasn't an issue, but it just felt like they were doing it for the sake of doing it.
There's one thing with the violence I would say. I really enjoyed it. They made the most of it as well. Definitely with those 2 characters. I think they really stretched that rating with the language. There were a couple characters where it felt a little, all right, but we've seen you in your own movies or your own, IPs, and you're not quite like that.
You're not that violent.
But
especially one for me, but we'll get to that.
But under the circumstances, you can kind of say, oh, well, fair. Given the context of the movie. But with the violence in the... like we said about Fox movies, usually they do have some pretty cracking opening scenes. This one has a great one with a great action set piece to a very fun musical number.
Yeah.
There is 4 distinct moments I can think of where someone gets stabbed in their penis or butt.
Yeah.
Just in that opening sequence.
Just in that opening sequence.
Yeah, and it carries on a little bit, not so much, but I think my problem with Deadpool 2 is that it didn't seem to, like I said, Deadpool 1 was funny when I was 15. Deadpool 2, I was a bit older, it wasn't really funny anymore. I was just like, well, this is just like 14-year-old humour. This, I found, teenagers will find it funny. You and I are adults. You didn't find it as funny as I did, but I did find it the funniest of the 3.
Really? Okay.
I found it hilarious. There's one joke which you spoke about already. After he suits up, there's a long suit up sequence. The whole cinema was just
roaring.
Yeah,
it was roaring because everyone was thinking the same thing, but no one had said anything up to that point, and he kind of let the joke breathe for a little while.
Yeah.
That was actually hilarious.
Yeah, I think going throughout is very funny, but also it doesn't get lost with the humour. I think the last one for me, there were some pretty serious stakes, but it kind of got lost underneath the non-stop joke cracking. Yeah. I think this one, you're able to feel the stakes and feel the emotion behind those stakes, but also the comedy as well. I think there's a good balance of, there are, I think, maybe 3 or 4 actually quite emotional moments where, as an audience, you're supposed to kind of digest it, and it doesn't undercut it with a joke straight away.
Which I thought was important. And that's how I could tell they definitely gave the characters the love that they deserved. They let them have those deep moments, and I did appreciate it. Don't get me wrong, I don't hate it, but I really don't love it. I really don't.
Out of 5, then, how many stars would you give it?
Oh, so now you like numbers, do you? Now you like rating films out of numbers. Out of 5, I think when the dust settles, I think it will probably be a 2.5.
Really?
At the moment, I'll lean towards a 3 because I love the characters and I think they got the love they deserve. But I think when the dust settles, people aren't going to look back on this that fondly.
There's that fella we saw earlier gave it a 1.5, which I think is...
That's harsh.
I think that's pushing too much in the other direction. For me, I'd give it a 5.
Yeah, so that's how... I mean, I could see the glint in your eye. As we left the cinema, you changed, man.
Yeah, so Third Brother was messaging us about it, and you said, we're not saying anything. And as I saw that text, it was immediately after I'd loosed a tweet saying this is top 5 Marvel movies. And I think it's 5.
Okay, so sorry, give me your top 5 now then. If that's number 5 at the moment. And understand that this can be listened to at any point in the future.
Yeah.
This is permanent.
Okay.
All right?
So
people are going to realise that next week when you change your mind, they're only going to hear this.
I'm not going to change my mind. I'm not going to change my mind,
so
because I think it's got
currently.
So not in no particular order.
Okay.
Guardians 3.
Okay.
Winter Soldier. Depending on if you want to count Infinity War and Endgame as one continuous movie.
One movie.
That.
Yeah.
Iron Man.
The first one.
Yes.
Okay.
Because it's a classic.
Yeah. And then Deadpool and Wolverine.
Was that 4? Was that 4 or 5?
You just named 4.
Winter Soldier.
Guardians 3.
Yeah.
Original Iron Man.
Oh, yes.
Infinity War, Endgame.
Yes. Now, Infinity War / Endgame, that could be interchanged with Far From Home for me.
Okay.
Because I know people really like the movie. For me, I wasn't really a fan, but as a comic book movie, yes. And so people might disagree with those rankings. It's my opinion. I'm not telling anyone else what to think, and I can understand why people perhaps would not like it as much as I did.
Yeah.
I think as an audience member, if you're not a comic book fan or you're not clued into the personal life and filmography of Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman and some other characters, some of the jokes don't necessarily make sense or wouldn't even sort of screen as jokes if you don't have that background knowledge.
As mental as it sounds, they broke the fourth wall too much.
Really?
In this. I appreciated in different moments, but it was like, it felt like that was their go-to joke. And it only hit like 50% of the time for me. But
I think because of the underlying narrative.
Yes.
I think that works in this instance. So it's not, I used to be Green Lantern. Isn't that such a bad movie?
Yeah.
It's, this is to do with what this is serving as at this point in time.
Yeah.
Some very, especially for, I was surprised. I thought there'd be a jab or two at Disney. It's very self-aware that it's been bought by Disney, but it still is able to shine as what we know Deadpool to be and enjoy it as.
Okay.
Yeah, so I for me, yeah, I really, really like it.
It's definitely worth going to cinema to watch. I can say that.
Absolutely.
And I think you can agree with that and then some.
Yeah. It's a good time, I think, first and foremost.
Yeah.
It doesn't, if you haven't seen any other Fox or MCU movies, it might not make a tremendous amount of sense in some instances, but you can go in, great action, funny, jokes as what it is. And, a relatively compelling plot. It's not breaking any new ground with it, but I enjoy that they've revisited established things that we've already seen. So the Void with the TVA, with Deadpool and the X-Men in that universe. What I said to you about Deadpool movies previously, I said he doesn't seem insane enough, right? And there's a couple moments in this where you're just like, oh yeah, like, this dude is nuts. Like, it would be a really weird thing to be completely aware that you're a character in a movie. Yeah. Which I really liked. And it wasn't non-stop. You're able to enjoy him as a character. But I did really enjoy that he seems quite particularly unhinged in moments in this as well.
Yeah, he actually is insane. That's true. I think we should get into it, spoiler-wise.
Yeah, 20-minute mark. So we'll stamp that in there.
20 minutes, right. I've got a little game for you. Right. I want you to rank these cameos out of 5.
All right.
Because we can't ignore it. This is cameo heavy. Like, it is very heavy.
So shall we just reel off who's in this, and then we can go into the rankings?
Let's go as we go along.
Okay.
I tried to make a list.
Right.
So the cameos that have the biggest impact on the plot would be X-23 to start off with.
Mm-hmm.
Go on, out of 5. There's a lot to go through.
Sorry, I'm going to say 4.
4. Pyro.
3.
That came out of nowhere for me. But I wasn't expecting him to take such a big role.
And he sticks around, doesn't he? Yeah.
3 out of 5. I think that's fair. Electra.
3.
Blade. Wesley Snipes' Blade.
3 just because not a very nice person. So it was a surprise to see him back in that role.
In the movie, I'm giving that a 5. Genuinely giving that 5.
Yeah, some callbacks to some old lines. And also there was that joke about Ryan Reynolds in Blade Trinity.
Yeah. So Blade, obviously Wesley Snipes has been in a movie with Ryan Reynolds, and apparently they did not get along. Or when I say they don't get along, it was Wesley Snipes hated the guts out of Ryan Reynolds, apparently. Yeah,
the classic morgue scene where he's got his eyes closed. He's refusing to... Yeah.
But he seemed lighthearted about that. I think you wanted to give a shout out to Jennifer Garner for a pretty good joke as well.
Yeah, there's a fantastic line with Jennifer Garner where... they ask where Daredevil is, and they say...
They're clearly referring to the Ben Affleck one.
Yes.
Jennifer Garner's ex-husband.
Yes. And obviously when this was filmed, that's probably quite a fresh separation.
Real fresh.
And they say, oh, he's not here.
And then
they kind of ruin the fact that he's not there.
He died trying to get to Cassandra Nova before.
Yeah.
And Devil says, not that much of a mister, is it?
No, Jennifer Garner says, she's like, he's not really missed.
This one was cool. And the moment I saw a card going into the room, I went, there's cameo after cameo after cameo, isn't there? But then they introduce Channing Tatum's Gambit.
Yes.
How do you feel about that?
That's got to be a 4, I think.
I think that's a 4. I liked that. It was fun.
Jokes out of that. I think he nailed the accent, and they make a joke about how the accent is kind of intelligible. Like, you can't really make out some of the things he's saying. When the car came in... truthfully, I thought it was Bullseye at first. I was expecting to see Colin Farrell walk through the door, but that was great. Comic accurate costume.
I will say, and I'll come back to this again, I think the costume did not work with him. He's not built for that anymore, is he? He's a little bit too stent. And they weren't paying him enough to cut down, were they? Yeah,
he definitely filled out for it. And those 4 characters, and then Pyro, so 5, they get a significant amount of screen time. Yeah. They all get jokes. And they all get kind of callbacks to their own movies or lack thereof. Yeah.
So this one was a bit. This one irked me a little bit. Juggernaut.
Really?
How do you feel about that?
I enjoyed it. Probably best they didn't get Vinnie Jones back because he didn't do a great job.
He didn't, but then at the same time, why did they give him the costume? So whoever the actor, we haven't actually done any research this. We are fresh off from the cinema. Whoever played Juggernaut in this movie has the exact costume Vinnie Jones had,
minus the rubber 6-pack.
Minus the rubber 6-pack. So why did they not just? If it's not Vinnie Jones, just do the other Juggernaut that's already exists in this universe.
True. Yeah.
I don't know. How are you rating that one? For me, that was a one.
Yeah, but perhaps a two. He doesn't do much. He's only there for his helmet, so...
He's only there for his head to get chopped off. Toad.
One or two, because I think it was the original actor, and it was kind of fun to see him back.
From the first time we've seen him since What Happens to a Toad when it gets struck by lightning. Arclight, did you notice she was there?
Is that the one with the purple?
Yeah.
One? Yeah. It's one just because there's not much to them. They're there as like a group of baddies, but I think it's a fun change from having a bunch of faceless goons to having people who you can say, oh, yes, it's him or her.
I put Azrael, Azazel. I put Azazel, Lady Deathstrike, Arclight in the same group with actually being a 5 for me. Because they fulfill their role perfectly, and if you know, you know. If you don't, it doesn't affect the story.
Yes, and so there's a lady with the porcupine lady from X-Men 3.
Yeah, but she was... They made her a lady, but originally it was a guy, remember? She got killed by the porcupine. Yes. I can't remember what his mutant name is.
Yes.
Sabretooth was a nice callback.
Yeah, not a lot of screen time, but that...
Did what he used to do.
Yeah, it looks exactly like he did in 2000, so that's cool.
This one is the biggest spoiler, I think, but my favourite one. I think this one's a 5 for me. Human Torch.
Very fun.
That was really... So, Chris Evans is... introduced via voice to begin with. We're made to believe he's Captain America.
Yes.
And then it all clicks. It's actually Johnny Storm. So that was my favourite cameo, actually.
I'd actually give that a 3 as well.
Okay.
He's in it for a while, and it's funny, and it's a nice twist, because you see his face, and you hear his voice, and they, like you said, they hang it up. Yeah, he flames on, and then all he does in that form is shoot fire at Pyro, and Pyro absorbs it, and then he runs out of flame, and it's kind of like, in the grand scheme of things, I think that'll probably be, 1, a bit harder of a matchup, and 2, you'd probably go for the other people first.
Yeah.
But, that's kind of nitpicky, and that's because I like Johnny Storm as a character. Yeah. I think anyone else, any normal moviegoer would just be really like, that's really fun. I can't believe they got him back. So
yeah. Those are the only ones that I noticed and made note of. Is any of the cameos I've missed there?
There is... there's 1,000,001 Deadpools in this movie, Lady Deadpool is... They make a couple jokes about Blake Lively previously, and that Lady Deadpool is assumedly Blake Lively, but basing that off the voice.
Yeah, it seems like it.
Yeah.
So, should we go back? Because I want to get to the Deadpool thing, but I don't want to do this I don't want to jump from place to place in the movie.
Should we run through the plot?
Let's run through the plot again and say what... I think maybe now I'll be able to say my issues a bit more and say what you love a bit more.
Okay.
That opening scene, at first I had my backup, right? So, like I said, whoever's made this has a lot of love for the X-Men. And they basically say what I said last week, which is Logan is the best X-Men movie, by the way.
Yes, they did.
So, they're doing it. Deadpool kind of opens the joke with... I'm not going to destroy the legacy of Logan. Ha ha ha, actually I am. So a little bit, I was a bit like, I had my back up a bit because I was like, oh, that does feel a little bit sacred. But actually it was quite funny in the end. And they did it for a good reason, a good plot reason. What I will say is, that opening sequence for me, I was really irked by the dancing bit.
Really?
I didn't get it. Like, it kind of hurt my brain a bit. It felt like a Deadpool advert within the Deadpool movie. I didn't quite get... So I didn't know why they didn't just do the straight action scene.
With the dancing in it. It cuts... So yeah, you're even doing the little dance.
Yeah, doing the in-sync dance kind of during it. I didn't... That threw me off straight away. So I think because of that start, it kind of threw me off.
Right. I was the same as you, I thought. Because it starts and Deadpool's like... This isn't how healing factors work. He's alive underneath this grave. So he digs up the grave and you see just an adamantium skeleton. And I thought, oh gosh. And then TVA members appear and he uses pretty much every bone that's left over from Logan. And then it intercuts with him dancing to Bye 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 in sync. But it's like you said, it's not he doesn't kill someone in dance, he kills, and then it cuts to him dancing by himself. It's like a music video.
Yeah.
But I thought it was fun. I thought it was tongue in cheek.
It was definitely meant to be fun, but for me, I was like, considering it felt like a little bit. There were callbacks to the first Deadpool, and the first Deadpool was able to incorporate the dancing and the fun into the action.
Yes.
And for me, there was fun in the action anyway. We didn't need the dancing like we didn't need it in Deadpool 1.
Okay.
But that was just, it was a minor gripe. I got over it very, very quickly.
Yeah.
I got over it very, very, very quickly.
For me, the use of cutting away was kind of to indicate, I don't know if this is like what was intended, but it's in his head, like he's having fun doing this, like the most fun he could have doing this.
But then then we get to the next scene showing that actually he wasn't having fun doing that. This was the most crucial thing that's ever happened to him.
Yes, so
how did you feel about that kind of storyline with the TVA, about him having to matter?
So I liked it.
Same. Yeah.
So the idea is that now, branching off what Loki's established about different timelines, is that each timeline has an anchor, and in most cases it's like a notable hero. So his timeline's hero was Logan, because obviously Wolverine is the most popular. Now that he is dead, their timeline is supposed to end.
It's over.
And so that kind of works, because then, that's why we'll never see another Elektra movie or another Blade movie with Wesley Snipes. And I quite like that. And so it just comes down to Deadpool for the whole movie. Firstly, he brings in another universe's Wolverine to try and make him a new anchor, but he's not a good hero. So the two of them have to go out and find another way to save their universe, and in the end, basically establish themselves as true heroes in a proper anchor point for the universe.
That's the story, yeah.
So yeah, I liked it. I thought it was fun. Which is, I think that's a lot of this, that it doesn't have to be very deep or very cerebral. It can just be, okay, yeah, you're not the best hero in this universe, so now I'm going to become the best hero in this universe. It's just fun, and you have a really good time on that journey.
Yeah, and I think that's why I was a bit like, it's not deep enough to be deep. I didn't have enough fun with it to be purely funny.
Okay.
The action was still good.
Yes.
But we were talking last week about how innovative a lot of the action in Deadpool especially, but the X-Men movies has been. And it did feel a little bit, I've seen it, basically. Like the big climax, we've now seen that in every Deadpool movie now. And like adding Wolverine into the mix wasn't enough, or they didn't use him enough to kind of make it more exciting than it would have been in Deadpool 1 and 2. They've made it bigger, but it's still the same, if that makes sense. It's the same type of shootings, half karate, gun fu kind of stuff. And that goes with pretty much every character, really. Every one of those characters lend themselves to the gun fu thing, but except maybe Gambit.
Yeah, I think so. There's probably 5 key action set pieces. The opening, like we said, Wolverine fights Deadpool initially, which is pretty gnarly. Like, they cut each other to bits.
Yeah. And they do that 3 times?
Yeah, they do it again, but the second time they do it, it's inside of a Honda Odyssey, so like a seven-seater.
Which I guess is kind of new.
Yeah, they don't really leave it. It's all inside there, and I think that was really fun. It's a very fun way to see like their abilities up close. And then we see them with the cameo characters fighting, and I really like the way they did Gambit. There's a particular moment.
Gambit was good.
Yeah, in slow motion, but whenever he keeps placing a card on people, like mines basically.
Yeah.
He speeds up as he's doing that motion and then goes back to slow motion. Yep. I thought that was a really cool way to just like show his powers in action.
Gambit was the most, and they made him more violent. And I didn't mind it, by the way, but they definitely made him more violent. Because they could.
Yeah.
That makes sense. He's not usually blowing the tops off people.
But he's always been in the void is what his storyline was. He doesn't remember being anywhere else.
Exactly so. But yeah. So, I mean, yeah. And another thing I really enjoyed was actually they made the visual of that Cassandra Nova... You've seen the comic book covers of Cassandra Nova's hand in people's heads, right? The way they did that in this movie is really good.
Yes,
I really, really enjoyed it.
She's really unsettling. Sorry, they're really unsettling. Emma Corrin, yeah, excellent job.
Yeah,
I think they worked hard. There's definitely love with the stunt coordination team, because Elektra still has her fighting style.
Yeah.
Blade has his distinct fighting style. They haven't tried to kind of blend them into something more contemporary. It's exactly how they fought in their own properties.
Yeah, even X-23 is the same.
Yeah,
yeah. So, yeah, we've after the Void now. So they've beaten Cassandra Nova. When I was talking about how Deadpool felt a little bit too self-aggrandizing, it was paramount for me in the very final scenes, where Cassandra Nova employs 100 other Deadpool variants as her henchmen, basically. I don't think Deadpool warranted that.
Right.
I really don't think Deadpool warranted that. I think because we've just done goodbye to the Fox characters, it felt a little bit like I was gearing up towards the end, and they even made a joke. It's almost like the script writers had all kind of been like, it feels like we've kind of come to an end here, but we need to make this 2 hours for some reason. I'm not saying this is what happened, but it felt like they had to make it 2 hours long. So they spent another half an hour with the final cut, the final kind of climax, if that makes sense. Because he even makes a joke about, don't worry, we're on the final stretch now. And I was a little bit like, I really thought we'd done this. Thought the plan was to get back there so that we can stop the TVA from destroying this timeline. We've got back here, and now I've got to spend another 20 minutes kind of watching not that funny an interaction between Deadpools, really.
Okay.
Because they think Deadpool's the most important character in this universe.
Well, what you got to remember is, for a lot of people, like, Deadpool is huge. You know what I mean?
Don't get me wrong, it's huge.
And I think with the Deadpool call, like, that's something that's been in comics now 10 plus years. And seeing those characters, but, you know, they're mentioned, and I thought they'd play a bigger role, which I thought, I don't know if I can be bothered for this.
Can see it from coming from a mile away. Yeah.
Well, I thought he was going to employ them to help him.
Okay.
But I quite like that it's just maybe a 15-minute sequence, and the action set piece, it's like the Daredevil corridor scenes. It's all side angle, one take.
We've seen that with Deadpool though.
But I really liked it, to be honest. I think the way they employ music in it as well, I think is heavy to that.
That was good.
Yeah. But yeah, it didn't need to be there. There's enough action.
It really didn't. I think the bit where they connect arms at the end to destroy the machine was enough of a send off to Deadpool's importance, because actually him taking on that responsibility, therefore kind of accepting something's bigger than him, which was kind of his whole theme in this story, kind of did on paper and within the movie what that scene with the 100 Deadpools did in a meta way.
But I would actually say the meta part of that is that it's all Deadpools, because we established that there is no Wolverines in the Void, and the subtext of that is because in every universe he's in, he matters.
Yeah.
And so pure Deadpools just mean in the Void means that really they don't matter in the grand scheme of things.
But we've already been told that. Do you know what I mean? Like, you've already spoken about how many Deadpools are there. We've already met one. I don't know. It's a harsh criticism, and I think it's partly because also the mid-credit scene. It's not even really a mid-credit scene. It's almost like a behind-the-scenes reel that they used to do back in the day.
Yeah.
Showed how much thought and love. And I've said it a million times now, but I think it's worth reiterating because it's really apparent how much they love not just the X-Men, but the Fantastic Four, Blade, Elektra.
Yes.
All iterations of them, by the way. We've seen Michael B. Jordan's Human Torch and Miles Teller's Mr. Fantastic. So that
was a nice touch.
All versions of them. So it showed that they really, really loved it. And I think actually, if they had been given an Endgame level budget, I don't think it would have been 100 Deadpools. It would have been mind-controlled X-Men and Fantastic Fours and all that.
I wouldn't have liked that.
I don't think I would have either.
I think that's
what they would have wanted. I think they wanted those people.
But I think it did. It must have had a huge budget anyway. They make a joke about when Johnny Storm dies, and they say you wouldn't care if you knew how much of the budget he needed into. But I am glad that it wasn't just a cavalcade of just pure. Oh, here's Miles Teller. Here's Jamie Bell and whatnot. I thought we were going to see because he mentions his read and whatnot. I thought we were going to see some of those older characters. I thought, this is going to get too big, and I'm glad it didn't. And I'm glad it's kind of underlined with the idea of these guys. They stopped mattering to the public and they stopped mattering to their studios. So within this story, they don't matter to their universes. So it's kind of like their characters reflect the general attitude towards their movies. And I thought it was nice. And then, like you said, that sort of highlight reel or supercut at the end of all the behind the scenes footage and clips of their respective movies, it kind of underlies that, maybe these movies weren't that good, or maybe they stopped being good, or people didn't like them, but these are still beloved characters to a lot of people, and we can still have a lot of fun, and they still matter as well. So I think I did enjoy that, and so I guess is going back to the climax, as you said, where they kind of come together, Deadpool and Wolverine, and they stop the universe from ending, because Wolverine is put at almost a lower point than Deadpool is in terms of how he views himself and how he's viewed by others. I thought that was a nice touch, and it kind of had shades of Old Man Logan, of Logan, which X-23 points out as well.
Yeah, she does.
And kind of the emotion behind that, because it's a funny movie, you've not spent the whole movie kind of getting very deeply emotionally attached, but it did get me not like crying, but it was emotional. It was like, this is really, really nice. It's like the sort of redemption arc in full that Logan didn't get to see. He has his redemption arc and he passes away and he doesn't get to see the fruits of his labor, and that's a beautiful thing. It's like a tragic but bittersweet ending. But with this, it was kind of like he gets to move past that and live the life that he deserved to live.
It didn't hit me that deeply because Logan had, in my opinion, had done it better. That's why it didn't hit me as deeply, because I'd seen that arc with Wolverine before.
I like that he wasn't different to the one we'd seen, though.
He was different, and it was done in a slightly different way. And like you said, it was less about his legacy, like Logan was, and more about him realizing and developing, rather than just leaving something behind and recognizing it at the very end. But this might be unpopular. For something I've been really dying to see, fought again what was pointed out for 20 years, I realised I actually didn't really want it. I didn't like the costume.
Really?
After you put the helmet on.
I thought I quite liked it. It seemed that after he put it on, though, they used more of a full body CG double.
Maybe that's why I didn't like it.
There were points, so after they finished their battle with the 100 Deadpools, they jump out the bus.
That was poor, and I understood that was CG.
And they linger on it for a bit much.
Too long. Like, it doesn't look good, so why are you lingering on it?
Yeah.
There was a few scenes where, there was genuinely just moments where I was like, okay, that looks good. So just before he goes into the energy room, I think I remember they really called it antimatter matter room. It's a side profile of Wolverine with his traditional helmet.
Yes.
I was like, okay, it looks cool there. But when Hugh Jackman's talking with the half cowl and the kind of Wolverine horn ears thing, it don't work for me. It works in motion, but not when he's static and talking for me.
I think thankfully it's not on for too long, so whether you like or dislike it, there's not a particularly large amount you can say about it, which I think was a good choice from them.
It was definitely a good choice.
Because clearly it's polarising.
Because it's going to be a talking point, because this is what people... I've been dying to kind of see it for a long time. I didn't hate the original X-Men stuff, but you know what? Like, I've now seen comic accurate Beast uniform. I kind of want to see this as well. So I then realised this is why they didn't do it in 2001. It definitely would not have worked in 2000.
Yeah.
For me, barely worked in 2024.
Okay. I liked the costume as a whole as well, even without the helmet.
Without the helmet, it was excellent.
I think it looked really, really good.
Sleeveless and with sleeves. Deadpool's costume looks like an improvement on the last one as well. I don't know why. That kind of looks better than it has done before.
It's a bit of a nitpick for me.
Go on.
But Wolverine it's so stupid. And it doesn't actually matter. It doesn't detract anything for me. But it's not a onesie. It's not like a full body suit. So it has a fake belt, and you can see, and it's not trying to be discreet. It's a top. It's a full top and a full bottom. Yeah. And it's kind of like, but Deadpool's in a full body suit. You probably could have done that.
Yeah. But it's because they wanted to get him naked at the end.
Yeah, but that is a point a point for jokes as well about whether Hugh Jackman had enough time to get in shape for the movie. The answer is he did. Definitely clearly.
He did. Wow. How old is he now? Like, he's got to be pushing 60.
No, I think he's just about 50. Surely. I don't think
even still. I loved the jokes that are like, well, you're going to be doing this to your 90 now because he's killed it again. We've seen online for the last few weeks who's the X-Man.
Yes.
I realised watching this, Wolverine is now the X-Man, really. In my mind, as a comic reader and as someone who's loved the X-Men since I really got into comic book stuff, for me it's Storm. But I realised watching this movie, it's actually Wolverine, isn't it?
To the public, if you say name an X-Man, Wolverine's first. And you know what? We got to see...
Even that now, I think for nerds, like, everyone was trying to push Cyclops. I saw a few people being like, well, obviously it's Professor X, but no, I think
Wolverine. I think in the comics it's Cyclops, but I think the comics are now in isolation to the rest of the public's view. And we got to, you know what, we forgot a certain cameo, didn't we? When they're visiting all the different variants of Wolverine, there's one specific one they come across.
Oh my lord!
What did you think about Henry Cavill Wolverine?
So. Do you know what? It relieved me a little bit because obviously news broke that Henry Cavill's joined the MCU, so everyone thought it was going to be Cyclops. No one thought he was going to be Wolverine.
No.
And no one thought he was going to be Wolverine in a Deadpool movie.
Even us, we were casting it as a short guy.
Yeah. So. Really rude choice, but I liked it.
And they do say that. Didn't they say, we'll treat you better than the people done this?
Better than them other guys. I like that he didn't feed into the joke.
No.
Like, he just played it straight. I really enjoyed that. What also surprised me is actually it looked kind of good.
He did.
I could actually see him potentially taking up the role for the MCU proper.
I wouldn't mind it.
Because he did look great.
So, with that, actually, there are two things I have a slight issue with in this movie. And it's continuity things. Which...
Don't do it.
Usually it's alright, but the first thing is that Logan takes place in 2029.
Yeah.
I suppose they've never said, but assumedly this movie is set in the 2030s now, because...
But it can't be.
Exactly, because the rest of the world hasn't gone to pot, and the X-Men still exist.
Look. Don't think about it too deeply.
Well, then here's the other thing. The movie starts with him in the proper Marvel universe, and he's interviewing Happy Hogan in 2018. How did he get there?
I don't think it matters. I genuinely... They said he got there via the cable thing.
But that doesn't allow him to switch universes.
No, it doesn't.
So the thing is, it has no bearing on the rest of the plot. It's too little...
Well, does it not? Because actually, what does this mean for the rest of the MCU? Does this mean Henry Cavill is going to be in the MCU? Does this mean that there is this Deadpool going to be seen in Secret Wars?
That's my question. I like that those characters, you think they die. I can't remember what the big wolf's called. But Deadpool manages to fold them into his universe, so they have a place to live.
What?
The big wolf in the sky, Irilith or something.
Yeah.
So X-23, Elektra, Blade, and Gambit.
I don't think Elektra, Gambit, and Blade made it. You know.
So
X-23 definitely did.
But yeah, because he pulls them through. He pulls them out. So but she's in the same place they are when they supposedly die. So I think the implication was that they all were able to be born into his universe, which kind of sets it up for we can see these characters again, and they have the potential to be left behind or to be folded into.
They're all available.
Yeah, which I think is promising. And if there is a Secret Wars and they do go ahead and do that, I wouldn't mind seeing these characters again. Truthfully,
I think they do make the joke where Blade says there's only ever going to be one Blade.
Yes. Deadpool does a long look at the camera.
A long look at the camera. I do want to see
Mahershala.
Oh my gosh. I do want to see the next Blade. I think a lot of people do.
Don't hold your breath.
I think this Gambit's good enough. I think this... Everyone's talking about how you can't recast Wolverine. Maybe don't. Maybe Wolverine doesn't have to be the X-Man in the MCU. Laura Kinney's still doing an amazing job at X-23. If they want to do X-23 in the MCU, just do her.
Yeah, that was it for me.
I
kind of did like a mental checklist, and I thought, who would I like to see in the mainline MCU, and who, through whatever plot, would be left behind, or do they exist? Are there two versions of them in one universe, and you just don't see one as such? I think there was a long period in the X-Men where you had the young versions of them coexisting. I thought that gets probably a bit messy. But you could do Logan goes and retires, and there's another version of Logan who gets folded in, and that's Henry Cavill. I'd like to see X-23 again, Daphne Keane. I'd like to see Ryan Reynolds again. I would like to see Emma Corrin again. I think that would be really interesting if another version of them would be faced up against our version of Charles. But
that's another implication. Actually, it now means that the first class X-Men are available because they are in Deadpool's universe as well.
Yes.
But then so is Patrick Stewart, because this is in Logan's universe as well. Do you know what? I think it just opens up. If they don't want to recast anyone, they don't need to now.
Yeah, they don't paint themselves into a corner. It's all very open-ended.
They just left it open-ended, which, smart idea, I guess, isn't it?
Yeah, you can do what you will with them. But also...
Would you like to see... Everyone's got that terrible fan fiction, in my opinion, of Secret Wars being every version of every character we've ever seen.
It's too much now.
But now, it's going to accelerate after this.
Maybe. But, it'll be interesting to see what the kind of reception is to this, because maybe it'll be negative and we don't get to see this again. But I'm glad they kind of went for broke for what they had. And whether you like it or not, they really did give it their all. For me, it really, really worked. For you, not so much.
But hey.
But it happened, and that's it. You don't have to see them in another big crossover movie. You could never see a lot of these characters again. And we didn't see a lot of these characters for 20 plus years, and no one really had an outcry about it.
Don't say that, otherwise you're putting them into the void.
Exactly. But yeah, there it is, yeah.
Well, I enjoyed it. You loved it. It's definitely a fine movie at the very, very least. But one thing's definitely for sure. If they are looking at recasting, definitely don't recast Ryan Reynolds. He does it perfectly. And I think I would see another, even if it's not going to be connected to the MCU, or if it's tangentially linked to the MCU, I'd still watch another one of these. I quite enjoyed it. I enjoyed it enough to watch another one.
Yeah, I think in a very fun way, it can exist by itself. Yeah. If Marvel decides to change that, I wouldn't hate, like I said, some of these characters being in there. I think if you try to do all of them along with all the other versions of lots of other people, it's too big, it's too messy. I think this was the right amount. The side characters we have from the past two movies, they're benched, right? It doesn't matter because we've had two movies with them. This one, these new characters, this cast of maybe like 5 or 6 people, we all get to learn a little bit about them, get a little bit of time with them, you grow a little bit of affection towards them. When you think they're dead, you do feel a little bit of, that's a shame. Yeah. And I think, if you do that, if you increase that cast more and more, you're just like, oh, okay. Yeah, so now Ewan Grufford's here. Yeah, he's fun, but, he's now there on top of 10 other characters or whatever. So
yeah. Well, look, we can't say anything definitive. We're on different pages, but we discussed it. We discussed it at length. So I think we'll leave it there for this week. But yeah, till next time. Maybe we should start doing it. We should do another Vaulted episode now, since I'm a bit inspired by that void. I think we need to do a Vaulted episode.
I think so. Yeah, there's a lot to unpack. So
yeah. Well, till then.
See you next week.